Alright folks, welcome back to the Mosin channel. Today we have two YouTube firsts. First off, I'm wearing pants while doing a video. Ask me how often that's happened. Second off, we have a Dragoon and a 9130 in the same video, and I'm not sure if this has ever been done before. I've never seen a video with it, so I'm assuming it's a first. If it's not a first, don't bother telling me. I like living in my little fantasy world. Alright, first we're going to start off with a little review of the 9130. Yes, this is a 1939 Tula 9130. It's one of my 9 personal ones. I just got a 9th one the other day. I can't stop collecting them. Don't ask why. Anyway, I'm going to move a little closer because my camera is still shit. After this video, I will be taking a short hiatus from buying guns in order to actually save up some cash and buy a decent camera. Watch and see when it happens. Anyway, yes, I'm sure everyone here has a 9130 or at least knows what one looks like. Globe front sight, rear leaf sight, interesting spring bands that hold on the barrel, separated at the bottom. I mean, it's a Mosin. This is probably the first Mosin you've ever seen, and it may be the only Mosin you've ever seen. There's not really a lot to say about it. It's the iconic design, the potbelly stock, the really ultra long handguard, really small globe over the front sight. This really flat rear sight, graduated in meters up to 2,000, which is very optimistic even in the best of times. I think that about covers it. My parents have decided they're going to have an argument in the background, and I'm going to kick them out of my house in about 10 minutes. It's going to end very badly. I will be written out of the will again. Anyway, this is the Dragoon. Yes, as you may have noticed, this is not updated at all. It is the same exact length as the 9130, but the primary difference being the one that everyone notices first. Konovalov rear sights designed by Vasily Pietrovich Konovalov in 1907 for the Spitzer cartridge, and a Barleycorn M91 style front sight. Now, I know I'm going to get 10 million questions unless I say this. Oh, before I say that, you really can't see it, but I will post a link in the comments section to the picture gallery for this, and yes, this does have a Kazzach'ya rear sight, which means that this rear sight belonged to a Cossack rifle originally. More on that later. Now, the basic action remains the same. Primary differences: we have an octagonal receiver. This was the very first receiver design done by Russia, and basically the reason it was abandoned was simply material and machining time. Apparently it took them longer to machine flat planes on here than it did to simply put the whole thing in a lathe and turn it off on all sides. I guess that made sense to Soviet weapon designers. That's really up to them. I wouldn't know really where they got that idea from, but whatever. Okay, the rear sight is identical to the M91 pattern. Same with the front sight. Now, on these weapons, these were basically designed to be shorter M91s. The reason for that being, when you're riding a horse, the M91 rifle is just too long, too heavy. The Dragoon is still too long and too heavy, but it's an improvement, kind of. And while we're here, the difference between the Cossack and the Dragoon is the fact that the Dragoon is sighted in with the bayonet mounted. The Cossack is sighted in without a bayonet mounted because the Cossacks did not actually use bayonets. They had large Shashka cavalry sabers, that they kept. They're not terribly common. You see a lot of reproductions from China that have ridiculous reproduction bayonets crammed on the sides. Those are fake, by the way, don't buy them. Now, this one does have some problems that I will be rectifying in the future as I get the chance. First off, the Dragoons are the split pattern, or the Dragoons, the barrel bands are the split pattern 9130 style, and I will be replacing those with the traditional Dragoon solid bands, or at least a button band from early 9130. The handguard is incorrect. Original Dragoon handguards for this year, 1922, would be second pattern, which means they come back to about here, and they have two little ears that slightly wrap around the rear of the sight. I'm not sure why they would do that, but they did it. You can see those also evidenced on the M27 and M28 rifles from Finland, which were very heavily influenced by the Dragoon. 1922, they had in fact crossed over from the early war, or the earlier production. I forget the name of the eagle. It's a two-headed eagle. We call it the Tsarist crest, and there's a name for the eagle that eludes me, but they had already changed over to a hammer and sickle inside of a wreath. Again, I will show you that picture. It will be in my photo bucket gallery. I have 10,000 pictures on there. The barrel is the same length and weight as a 91, or it's the same length and weight as a 9130. It is the same weight as the 91 as well. They were not heavier barrels, they were not lighter barrels, they were identical. The Dragoon is not overly accurate, which makes it kind of strange that they graduated it out to 3100 Arshini, which is roughly the same as 2200 meters, I think. Yeah. At that range, even with a modern match grade load, you would basically be flinging your brass and hoping that it was going to hit something. And spoiler alert, it wasn't going to hit jack shit. The stock is pretty much identical. Now, this stock is something of a mystery because it does have a date here. It has a Tula star and a date, but we can't read it. It has faded to the point that it is impossible to tell anything about it. It appears to be 1934 maybe, which would make it a 9130 stock. By that token, it could also be 1924, it could be 1921 for all I know. I can't read it. All evidence points to this actually being a Spanish Civil War issued 91 Dragoon, which there were several of them sent over there. Now, my hypothesis behind, or my reason for my hypothesis behind the origin of this rifle is the overall condition is very, very rough. It's been there, it's done that. It has definitely seen its fair share of combat use. It has no matching serial numbers whatsoever. And oddly enough, the Soviet crest, again, you really can't see it still. Sorry for my shitty camera. Your Soviet crest has been ground off on the barrel shank, but on the receiver, they still have it intact, unmolested, unmodified, and that is just weird. I've never seen that done before on a rifle, to be honest with you, so this may actually be a Balkans era bring back. Oh, it has no import marks, by the way. It may have come in from the Balkans, but I seriously doubt it. I'm assuming that Spanish Civil War had something to do with this because it looks like it was put back together from various parts, which is what the fascist forces under General Franco were doing at the time. In the 60s, they sent in droves of these, usually with a made in USSR or made in URRS stamp on the top of them, and an MP8 in a flaming bomb somewhere located on this thing, usually on the right or left side of the stock. This doesn't have any of those traditional marks. It does not have a Finnish Suomenarmea acceptance stamp. It has no cartouches of any type, and I have been actually looking at it with a magnifying glass and a jeweler's glass to see, because I was fairly sure I would find some kind of tiny stamp, and I'm still looking, just so you know. I'm really determined to figure out where this came from. Basically, yeah, that's what you're looking for in an actual Dragoon. Look for 91 pattern sights, the same length as a 9130. Look for second or first pattern handguards wrap all the way around the rear sight. They're completely wooden. They wrap all the way around to the back. They're usually broken towards the back because they were very fragile in that area. If you know what the 1907 carbine is, that's based on first pattern Dragoon handguards. Second pattern, it was cut off right approximately here, but it was still fully wooden back until here. Then this is third pattern, or 9130, which is the metal end caps on both ends of the handguard. You'll be looking for solid barrel bands. Now, Dragoons never actually had a split in their barrel bands, which was considered to be a major design flaw because it made removing the bands a pain in the ass. The first 9130s attempted to fix that by implementing what was called a button band, and it's a band that looks very much like this. It's split at the bottom, but at the bottom there's a little rivet that goes through both ends and allows you to expand the band a little bit without it actually, coming completely apart. Those were abandoned because they were extremely complicated within the first 2 years of production. By about 1934, the 9130 had taken on its traditional shape. 1935 and 36, of course, were the changeovers for the hex receiver to the round receiver at the two arsenals. 35 was Ishevsk, and 36 was Tula. In the very beginning, it was very difficult to tell 9130s apart from Dragoons, and you had what was called a Panshin 9130. Now, I will be acquiring one of these in the near future. I've actually located one, and I am currently in negotiations on price, but it has the familiar flat rear leaf sight of the 9130. It has the forward sight of a Dragoon, a slightly modified forward sight from a Dragoon, and it uses a special, it's hard to really tell you what it is. It's a special bayonet that looks pretty similar to the standard plunger 9130, but it actually has a sight hood built onto it. So you would slide your sight, you would slide the entire bayonet assembly on here, and then you'd turn it, and the sight hood would lock over the front sight. And again, very, very expensive to produce, and was made for only the first 2 years before it was canceled in 1932 in favor of the traditional forward sight found on 9130s. I need to clean that. Anyway, otherwise they're pretty much identical to each other. It would be very hard, like I said, it's very hard to tell an early 9130 apart from a late Dragoon, and as you can see, just at a glance, they're pretty damn similar. You can tell the rear sights are different, and that's pretty much how everyone identifies a Dragoon, is by the 91 pattern rear sights. When you get more advanced, you'll learn to recognize the different things. The spring bands, the springs are a little different. The bands are very much different. Damn, I can't show it to you on this, guys, because I have the 9130 stock on it, but the stock is a little tiny bit different. The Dragoon is more pot-bellied here. It's a little bit more robust. 9130 smoothed that out a little bit. And again, it's so minor, you wouldn't really know the difference unless you were looking directly at it. And for reference, they did in fact continue producing Dragoons into the 1930s. They were officially ended in 1932. No, 31. 31 or 32 they officially ended. Late pattern Dragoons looked just like this one. The only difference between them and the 9130 was the sights, and the only reason for their production was the fact that Russia had a lot of sights left over. They produced a lot of extras, and they just cobbled them together really quick and threw them out there. After they were updated to 9130 specifications, they became impossible to tell apart from a regular 9130 of the era. And since we're here, I just want to address it one more time. The 9130 did not start round receiver production until 1935 at Ishevsk, 1936 at Tula. I've had people arguing with me at gun shows about that because they think 9130, they think round receiver. No. Just because it has a hex receiver doesn't make it an X-Dragoon. An X-Dragoon is most often made before 1930, and most of the time you will see evidence, pretty strong evidence, that it was once a Dragoon. Instead of just, the standard hex receiver, you'll notice some things on the sight base where they had to actually pin it and tack weld it sometimes, because this was not designed to take the 9130 rear sight. That was an oddity that just appeared later on, and it was pretty much had to be modified to work with it. Also, a first pattern Dragoon, an original unmodified first pattern Dragoon, is going to have a flat rear sight. It's going to be very similar to the 9130 in that it's very flat, but that's where the similarities end, I should say. It's going to have a sawtooth base, very much like this, but the sight itself will be completely straight. It'll be very thin, and it will have, I don't know how to explain it. Give me a second here. I'm trying to think how to do it. It's pinned on the inside instead of, if you have a 91 at home, pull it out now and look at your rear sight, and you'll notice you have two ears on the outside. The original pattern Dragoon is attached very similar to the 9130, where the ears are on the outside and actually attached to the base. So you just have a small little attachment point on the inside here. That was one of the reasons that it was abandoned, because the design itself was not extremely strong. Also, it was not conducive to Spitzer cartridges. It was only designed to handle the firing arc of a black powder cartridge, which is very, very different. And I will actually in the future have some 7.62 by 54R round nose black powder cartridges to compare to the Spitzer ones and explain the difference. Trying to think if there's anything else I've missed here. No, I think that about covers it. Oh, right. Dragoons followed really nothing, or sorry, let me start over there. Dragoons did not follow the 91 in production archetypes. They never had a band-mounted sling swivel. They never had a magazine-mounted sling swivel. They always had the sling slots inside the stock. So if you see a Dragoon that has a sling swivel band or a sling swivel magazine, those are parts from a 91, and they are very, very, very hideously valuable parts. So, I'd recommend selling them, because you will make a fortune, and you will make a collector very happy when they can restore part of their first pattern 91. Dragoons also never had the 91 pattern handguard, where it was kind of bumped up and two little tabs that connected under here. That never happened. So if you see one like that, it's been messed with. Don't buy the seller's statement that it's original. A Dragoon will always have the 9130 style attachment for their handguard. they'll usually end up with a 9130 handguard because second pattern Dragoon handguards and first pattern ones are extremely rare, extremely valuable. This whole rifle cost me less than what a second pattern handguard would cost. It cost me about a tenth of what a first pattern handguard with intact rear, whatever you want to call it, intact rear wood would cost me. So yeah, if you see one like that, remember to let your old pal Sergey know before you go bidding so that he can outbid you. I'm just fucking with you, I wouldn't do that. But yeah, if you see one like that and you want to sell it, let me know. I will offer you some cash, and if I can't, I know some people that will offer you major cash for it. But anyway, I think that about covers everything I wanted to do. I'll have a shooting comparison up on these, and I know I usually don't do those, mostly because my shooting range does not allow cameras, which is a pain in the ass. I will also be attempting to do some videos with my cell phone later, which will be the feature video that I promised for the 28, which is sitting on the wall over there. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do that because that gets a lot better focus and a lot better clarity than this damn webcam. And hopefully within the next few months I will have a good digital camera that I can use, and then you can see my smiling face in high definition or whatever. And I'll be able to show you some of these proof marks on a video instead of just linking to my photo buckets like plebeians, whatever else. Anyway, this is Sergey signing off again.